Okay, let me.
I think we're live. We're live, Atique. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on a brand new episode of 420 Grams. Atique was about to say something, but then I quickly prompted him saying, we're live. Atique, what if you say something you don't want to say that when we're live? So I thought I'd stop him there and then. But look, as promised, we said we'd be coming by 3, but about 15 minutes late. But that's because of connectivity issues. And one of our crew members, Mr. Jaideep Basu, is still trying to connect on Wi-Fi. So we hope he can join us during the course of the show. Now, this show, of course, means we're talking specifically about India's second opponent in these World Cup and Asian Cup qualifiers, the games they've gone to play in Qatar, and that being Bangladesh, a Bangladeshi side that had come to Kolkata and drawn 1-1 with India. And for large parts of that game, that Bangladeshi side looked like the better team, and it looked like they were going to walk away with 3 points until Adil Khan, of course, popped up with that header and rescued a point for the Indian team. So today we're going to talk about what the progression has been for that Bangladeshi team from that game in Kolkata. And to talk about them is someone who knows them really well. We've got a journalist from the Daily Star in Dhaka, Atique Anam, someone who covers football in a very big way. Atique, thank you so much for taking our time and joining us on 420 Grams. We're also joined by Siddhant Annie, and Atique knows this, that just 5 minutes before the show went live, Siddhant was wearing a t-shirt and he suddenly changed and wore a shirt and came. And that means you are the most professional person on this show, my friend. We must salute you for that, Siddhant Annie. But Atique, Bangladesh. So I'll tell you the reaction post Kolkata when that game happened. And it was like, we didn't know what to say. And with all due respect to the Bangladeshi side, because
that's not true. We had a lot to say.
I mean, we had a lot to say, but in the sense that, we were taken aback. And I don't mean no disrespect for Bangladesh, but we were playing in Calcutta. We had just done a 1-1 with Qatar or a 0-0 with Qatar in Qatar. So, we thought we were in the ascendancy, and then we had the ISL. So, we talk a lot about the ISL. So we say our players are getting better, and they are getting better. What was the reaction in Bangladesh post that result in Kolkata?
First of all, thank you, Arjun. Thank you, Siddhant, and everyone. Thank you for getting me here. I would say there are two sides of this story. Firstly, Bangladesh has a great history with Indian football. That goes a long way, actually. So we always used to think in the 80s and 90s that Bangladesh and India first and then Bangladesh are the more strongest teams in the South Asian region. Things have not gone that direction in the recent times, in the last 2 decades. But if you analyze the results between these two teams in the last 1 decade, Bangladesh and India, they played 3 matches. All 3 of those ended in draws. So it was not a very surprising result for us. And given that the performance of that match, I would say we were a bit disappointed because we led the Indian team for like 88 minutes. And eventually we considered the goal. It was a good goal from Adil Khan.
Yeah.
But it was okay. Playing in Kolkata in front of a 70,000, 80,000 crowd and showing that sort of performance was really praiseworthy. Everyone praised our team, but we would have been happier had we got the 3 points.
Absolutely. We're joined by Jaideep Basu as well. So good to have you. Wi-Fi Zindabad. You have pierced through your Wi-Fi issues and joined us on the show. And since you just come right now, Jaideep sir, I can't hear you. You muted yourself. Aap apna unmute kar lijiye, if you can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Jaideep sir. Since you've just joined, why don't you just heard about the Bangladeshi reaction post that game in Kolkata. How about telling Atique on what the reaction was in India post those 90 minutes versus Bangladesh?
I think what Mr. Atique has just said, he is absolutely right. Had I been a Bangladeshi fan, which I am not, of course, then I would have also been very unhappy not to get 3 points, because the teams deserve to get 3 points that day. Of course, Adil Khan spoiled the show by scoring that goal, but Bangladesh definitely deserved to get 3 points that particular day. But from the Indian point of view, point of view, I would say the reaction in the Indian fans camp and the Indian national team camp was very, very disappointing. As Sunil Chhetri has gone on record saying, it is one of the worst matches India have played in recent months. And according to my sources, even everybody in the Indian camp, including the coaching staff, was very upset with the way India played, because see, if you look at that match, even long before the match could be played, then the Indian coach started saying that more and more people should come to the ground, they should support India, and all these kinds of publicity was made, all these kinds of arrangements were made, so that what Mr. Atique just said, that 60,000-70,000, actually 66,000 people were at the ground at that particular day to support India. And despite having all the favorable atmosphere, despite playing against your own, at your own ground, despite playing against a team which lower in your FIFA ranking, despite playing against a team which you have beaten not once but many times in the recent past, if you play such football, then it was a great disappointment from the Indian point of view. But I will again like to add that day Bangladesh were very, very unlucky not
Yeah,
to
they came with a plan and
They came
executed
with a
that
plan.
plan.
And they were very unlucky not to get 3 points. I
Atique
think they should have got 3 points.
agreed, sir. I don't think anyone is going to disagree with you on that. Just the setup that they did on that day, numbers behind the ball, the way they played in Kolkata, break on the counter, let the Indians come on to you, suck them in, break on them, and they did that. Is that a characteristic which is you see often with the Bangladeshi side, or is this something they just adopted because they were playing in Kolkata?
No, absolutely. That is how Mr. Jamie Day plays his football. That is, unless you're playing against Qatar, where everyone will be sitting behind the ball, and no one will be really going for even a counter attack. He would mix up defensive. He would go for a very disciplined defensive approach. Then he will go for counter attack on the break. That is usually how he plays. Unless you're playing against a very lower opposition or someone who's really higher than you.
Fair point. Siddhant bhai, you tell us, man, what was your key takeaway from those 90 minutes in Kolkata, whether it be Bangladesh or whether it be India that night? You're mute, bhai.
So, I mean, of course, you guys have covered the main points in terms of what our takeaways were. There was a massive sense of disappointment for all of us as fans of the Indian team and following the Indian team. It reflected kind of the maybe overconfidence or the kind of approach that we have in India towards especially other South Asian countries, where we sort of take it for granted that we are better, superior, etc., etc. And I think our colleague from Bangladesh might be able to attest to this, but this attitude is something that is not limited to the football field, but kind of is a overall big brother kind of attitude that India has towards the region. So it was a solid reality check, also because of all the interest that's been drummed up by the new league and all of that, where we are suddenly thinking that the level of or the standard of football has increased tremendously in this country because of all the foreign players and the coaches and the money that's coming into it. Whereas we are not very much aware of what's happening in Bangladesh. And it was great to see that despite perhaps less, global or wider attention to domestic football in Bangladesh, that country is doing as well and keeping up with the larger neighbor in that sense. I think we were caught by surprise. Maybe the team didn't do enough homework in terms of understanding how exactly to break Bangladesh down. And honestly, we were thinking that the approach to the game from the Bangladeshi side might be more defensive, whereas they came out kind of going for it, and we were not able to find an answer to that either approach or and that there was a definite lack of creativity in terms of how we approach the game. So that pretty much sums it up.
And another point, Siddhant, I think it was not only a disappointment, it was a kind of anticlimax, because after drawing goalless with Qatar, we thought that we have almost beaten the Asian champions. So so we will be a runaway winners.
So, I didn't want to. I wanted to actually say something, but last show I've been called out by the people who watch our show as saying Arjun is too negative and rude. So I'm gonna cut back on this thing.
With whom? With whom? With people who deserve.
I don't know, but I'm just gonna try being a little positive on the show. My point being, Atique, just one thing.
I do want to say before you carry on with the more pertinent part of our conversation that no disrespect to the people who watch and comment, but everyone has an opinion on all kinds of things, and I don't think you should pay too much attention to it. I think when you were missing from the show for a little while, all our audience members, especially our regulars, kept asking for you, and it's a small sign of how much your role is appreciated here. So I think keep on keeping on.
One sec, bro. I'm just picking up my bloated head. It just fell down.
Yeah.
Putting it on myself right now. I think
you've got two firebrands at home to keep your head size in check.
भाई पप्पी दे देता खत्म कहानी इतनी बड़ी बात क्यों बोलनी जरूरी थी. But I think very simple question, and Siddhant brought out a good point. So that is what he's saying. That is his perception that India is the big boy in the region. We go in for a SAF championship. We come out saying if you don't win, failure. Not even a finalist or anything like that. So that is the perception we have. What is the perception in Bangladesh with regards to India, with regards to the fact that there's a league that's been going on for the 6-7 years? You're getting these foreign imports, top level European players. I don't know if top level, but better than what they used to come earlier. What is the perception back home in Bangladesh around Indian football?
Before I come to that point, and let me go back to that India-Bangladesh match. That was, I think the coach did really well. Studied all the Indian players really well. He employed our captain Jamal Bhuiya to mark Sunil Chetri. Now, Sunil Chetri, everyone knows, is a legend. He can score goals from anywhere. And he's been a thorn in our side for a long, long time. So, Jamal Bhuiya absolutely neutralized him in that match. And that is one reason probably India didn't get a goal earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, coming back to what Siddhant is saying is, Bangladesh actually used to have a very rich tradition, culture in football, like in Kolkata in West Bengal. Football used to be the people's sport back in the 80s and 90s. But then when cricket came and cricket team qualified for the World Cup in 1999, football started to lose its popularity. But there is a rebuilding in process in the last 10 years, even though the results haven't come at the international stage, but the league is getting more and more interesting. There are now good players coming again. We used to have players like Nasser Hejazi, Karim Bagheri, the World Cup players, Emeka from Iran, Iraq, Nigeria, all those players in the 80s and 90s. But then those players like that it started to stop coming. Now we are getting again the players Sonny Norde, Colin Dress from Costa Rica. Now we have quite a few Argentine and Brazilian players, top level players. So the league is getting more and more interesting. It just needs them to be reflected in the results of our national team. The national team is in the rebuilding process, but we hope sooner rather than later we'll get there.
But I think what's the perception towards India then? I mean, I get your point that it's growing in Bangladesh. But what is the perception to the neighbor because over here, and I don't know if it's criticism, because in a league which is only 7 years old, which means you've barely taken baby steps also. If you look at histories of sport leagues, you've barely started walking. But in these 7 years, this perception has come that suddenly India's footballing used to be like this, and now these 7 years have taken it to another level, right? So is that reflecting in what you guys are thinking of the neighbors?
Actually, we are not. We always since the turn of the century, India started to get so much ahead of the other teams. India, Maldives, and Afghanistan started to win every trophy. So we all know that India is the best team in this region, maybe along with Afghanistan, who are not part of this region anymore. But everyone concedes that India are the best team in this region. But you're talking about ISL, I think there is there is very little interest about ISL. People hardly watch ISL.
Mhm.
And I think there is a division even in India regarding the ISL, right?
Oh, there's division on the show. There's a person who's wearing this, who's changed your shirt and come. He's a pro I-League person. Don't get him started, Atique.
But ISL has done tremendous things. The facilities, the grounds, the players that they get to rub their shoulders with. It will obviously have an impact in the longer term. I'm sure.
Absolutely. I mean that longer term, you could say 20 years. That is a long-term impact, right? I mean, 7 years to expect it to have an impact would be a very minute, minuscule kind of impact. Yes, sir. Aapne apna haath. You put your hand up. You may speak.
Thank you.
No,
I want to clarify once more. You do this all the time, by the way, Mr. Host. I am not pro one league or anti another league. The thing that we were against was the manner in which the ISL came in and replaced the I-League as the national championship for clubs, right? The manner in which it was done and the closed manner in which it was done as a franchise model, where clubs that have popularity in the first many seasons, I think you will also be familiar with clubs like Mohun Bagan, East Bengal and all that. They were not allowed to be a part of that system because it was a franchise that was given out by a private party. It was a privately owned league that came in and kind of superseded what was existing for many years in Indian football. That was the only limited thing that we were against, which in any case, the Federation has clarified, so we can get over this and move on.
At least tell us what the thing is of your party, your morcha. At least tell us what your I-League ka morcha is. Ki hamari mange.
Can I ask you one thing to Mr. Okay.
Sure. Please.
Go ahead. Please go ahead.
We're just faffing around.
I will ask Mr. Atique one thing that see, we were supposed to play the Philippines tomorrow as a friendly match, which has been, you also know, perhaps you know, it has been cancelled because the Qatari government has not given us permission to play. So Bangladesh was also supposed to play a couple of matches, and last I heard there was some talks going on with the Bangladeshi Federation. Any update on that? Are they playing a couple of matches before the qualifiers, or they are straight away getting into the qualifiers?
Let me begin from the beginning. Actually, we were supposed to go to Qatar on the 21st of May. The plan was to have a 10-day training camp there and play 1 or 2 practice matches there.
Okay.
But then what we were told by the Federation was that they wouldn't be allowed to go outside the bubble. They would just be allowed to go to the practice venue and back to the hotel. They wouldn't be allowed to go to the gym and swimming pool. And no question about any practice matches. So they didn't accept that proposal. And I think that's actually true for India, because India are now not getting to play any practice matches. They're inside a bubble.
So, no, what I mean to say is it can you think that it can impact the preparations of Bangladesh?
Absolutely.
But it impacts everyone, right, Atique? I mean,
absolutely. No. Let me come to that. After that was cancelled, the Federation tried to arrange a 6-day camp in Saudi Arabia. You know that, but they were all supposed to fly on the 24th of May for Saudi Arabia, but early in the morning, the players and officials and the media journalists, we got a message from the Federation that we couldn't get an exemption letter from the Saudi government for the exemption from the quarantine. So that idea was also shelved. Now, what is happening is they're training in Dhaka. Everyone, the coach, the players, everyone is pissed off with this mismanagement, if you say. And they're supposed to play 1 practice match against local side Sheikh Jamal Dhanmondi Club today, as we speak at 4 p.m. today. That's all they'll get to play before. They'll fly to Qatar tomorrow and have 3 or 4 days practice there. So no one is actually very convinced. No one is actually very happy about that. Because you can't, when Afghanistan is playing against Indonesia and Singapore, Qatar has played, Oman is playing against other teams. So we need to play against big teams to face big teams like Oman, India, and Afghanistan. But that's not happening.
Fair point, Atique. I just want to ask you. So, if you could tell all the people who watch our show, and we've got these kids, who really like Indian football. I think the one good thing with Indian football is that there are a lot of young kids who are getting into it. They're invested in the game, so they talk about the game. They feel for the game. They feel bad if the team does badly. Could you tell them a bit about this Bangladeshi side, and not just the side that played the 1-1 with India in Kolkata, but from there on, the months to now, present day. Has the team changed? Is it pretty much the same system, same set of players? And is that what we can expect when India plays them?
Unfortunately, it's not the same team because there are only 10 or 11 players from that squad. In this squad, some of them, most of them due to injuries. One or two had COVID and one or two due to lack of form. But still, the base of the side is there. The philosophy is there. And they're have a similar mindset actually, and the same coach is there. Not from the, let me begin from the start of the Jamie Day era. Jamie Day, our coach, came in 2018, middle of 2018. What he did with success was turn it into a very young, energetic side. Previously, we used to see that our teams used to play 60, 70 minutes at one tempo, then they get tired and lose concentration and concede goals the latter part of the games. Now, these players, these young players, they can play in with the same intensity, same concentration for 90 minutes. They will, when playing against India or playing against Afghanistan, they'll play in the same tempo for 90 minutes. They will fight hard. That's one thing for sure. They have good discipline, good defensive organization. That is what is good about this team. Now, if we come to the bad point, that is for the last 2 decades, we haven't found a really good scorer. No proven scorer for
except for Sunil.
Same, except for Sunil. When Sunil comes up every time, you need goals. But there is no one like Sunil in Bangladesh. No one like, let's say, Ali Ashfaq or Chencho Gelshen.
Yeah.
But what about the, you didn't tell us about the, you have brought in a under 19 boy from Finland or somewhere. Can you just tell us how the boy is good or what is his background?
Well, he's not, he was born in Finland to Bangladeshi parents.
What is his name?
Tariq Kazi.
Tariq Kazi.
He's playing for our champions, Bosundara Kings, but not a very regular. He's a defensive player, but not a very regular. I'm not sure whether he will get to play in these matches.
Okay. But I think just one thing. So you mentioned about how he's made them a very fit side, right? So they're not just lasting 60, 65. They're continuing same tempo till 90. From a national team coach's perspective, how did he do that? Because a national team coach doesn't get the same amount of time he gets as a club coach. So you get them for 5 days, 10 days. Or is Bangladesh doing the same kind of system what India used to do, like with the Bob Houghton, where he would be given the boys for 2 months and then he could, impart his ethos and whatever he wants them to do?
Well, usually he gets, before qualifiers or important matches, he gets at least 15 to sometimes a month.
Oh, he gets a month. That's not bad.
Sometimes if he's lucky. Other times during off season when the league is going on, he gets his players, but he's always watching those players. He has this team of coaches who goes to the clubs and talks to those players. The thing is, he formulated their fitness regime and their diet. He changed their diet. In the past, we used to have a different sort of diet these players. Now they're used to getting used to different sort of diets. When they're playing, going to a tournament, they're always staying in 5-star hotels with good facilities, gym facilities. So that way they're getting better in fitness. And he prefers fit and young players, not someone with reputation, just reputation.
Jaideep sir reminds a lot of Bob Houghton, right?
Yeah.
When he started.
Bob Houghton used to have faith kept his faith in a bunch of boys, 20 to 25 boys. He always played, and he had, of course, also in fitness. It also reminds of Stephen Constantine, because there was at one point of time there was some people even were talking about whether the team is run by Stephen or by Danny, our fitness coach. But what players tell me that the kind of time Danny used to get from the coach, no foreign coach or no national coach, no Indian coach in India has ever given so much time to a fitness coach. He will have as much time as he wants to, and that also paid dividends. If India has done well, reached
at
up
the
to
international level, sir, you have to play shape football.
But I'm not sure what is happening now. I will refrain myself from commenting since we are playing 3 matches in the next 3 weeks. So let us see what happens. But as reports say, maybe the fitness trainer, I think I am sure he will be doing a good job. All I can say.
Okay, let me ask you, like, you had Bob Hartman for a long time, then you had Constantine. He was pretty successful too.
Yes.
Now Igor Stimac. Who, according to you, was the most suited coach for Indian team or delivered better results?
Sir, I think I don't need to ask the other two. All three of us in tandem will say Bob Houghton, Atique,
Exactly.
because
that was what I thought too.
But also, you know what the thing is, we come from a different era. I mean, it's not like, we're that far back, but a lot of the kids who are now involved in football, like I spoke about them, they probably did not know about Indian football as much pre-ISL. What Bob did was, like you're talking about your coach, is he brought in the same ethos. Ki mera player hai, so he's going to stay in a 5-star. He's a national team player. He's not going to stay in some small type hotel. He's a national team player. He has to be given all the facilities. He needs to be made to feel important, that he is one of the 15 in this country who's representing his team. So Bob brought that out. He brought the trust out. And which is why you talk to any player from Bob's era, and I'm guessing these boys will do that about your coach going forward. They always blindly, they've played under different coaches. Constantine, this was his second attempt with the Indian team. But everyone talks about Bob, saying Bob is the main man who brought about a lot of change in Indian football. I don't know if Siddhant, Jaideep, if you guys want to add something, because Constantine, so just one last thing, Constantine, what he did in his second stint, and you have to give him credit for that, is that he made it a battle-hardened, ready squad. He sort of understood that if I have to play at the international level and if I have to get results, then I am not looking to play beautiful football. I am not looking to play with the ball in my feet. For me, first priority is to last 90 minutes, same tempo, same shape. And then when I can break on the counter, I'll get them. And India got quite a lot of success courtesy of that. Moved to the Asian Cup, gave a good account of themselves in the Asian Cup in 2019.
And Arjun, I would say, Bob, another very good point, which you said, you already has brought out one point that he always used to keep players in good hotels, good food, good travel, everything, which of course he did a brilliant job, and which of course Milovan also did when he was the coach in the 80s. That was the time when India started staying in 5-star hotels. Bob, another thing, I will give you a small example. Another thing, Bob, which brought in, which no other coach, is the respect for the players.
Yes.
I remember in 2000, it was 2009 or 2008. I don't remember the date. There was a function in the Indian International Center at Lodi Road on some former footballers, players of the 50s and 60s were given some, by the sports minister, were give away some money and felicitation and whatever. In that, then sports minister, Mr. M.S. Gill, came up with a comment that 50s and 60s Indian used to be a great team. Now these players might lose to Australian school team and England school team or something like that. And it was picked up by Bob, and in a press conference in the federation office at the Dwarka, he slammed the sports minister right, left, and center. And he said the sports minister should concentrate on improving Indian sports rather than talking about whether school teams can beat India, because he knows nothing about Indian football. And there was so much pressure on Indian team. I think it was 2009. There was so much pressure on Indian team, so much pressure on federation. Even sports ministry went to the extent of demanding the removal of the coach. Of course, it never happened. But the kind of backing Bob gave to the players, I was really surprised. Any other coach would have run away. Had it been Indian coach, they would have just kept quiet and said nothing. May have supported the minister also. But this is something which Bob brought in, like Arjun has said, which no other coach, I think, before has done. At least I don't remember. If anybody else can remember.
Because you would have to put your neck on the line.
Right,
Anyway, basically Bob did. Sorry, Atique, if we're sort of, because you opened this Pandora's box. We don't get to talk about Bob Houghton that much. Now you've opened it up, so you have to sit and listen. The thing is, he went against the grain, because he would have had to probably had a conversation with whoever was in the federation at the time and saying, why are you making them stay in Daryaganj? Why are they staying in those hotels? And then the guy would have said, okay, fine, we'll make him stay, but you get the results. You get my point. That kind of thinking is there. So he did that, and you show faith to a player. Showing faith is such an underrated quality of a coach. It's not tangible, so you can't measure it, but it's huge for a player. If uske upar haath rakho, bolo bhai bharosa hai. Move on.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was a whole different time back then, and that is reflected in the kind of personality that the coach had as well. And to an extent, Stephen was, while his approach might have been different, and as a person, of course, they are different people. So you'll talk. There are some players who will say they really appreciate Stephen's time because he brought them into the national team. Similarly for Bob, I think if you look at, of course, we all talk about Sunil Chhetri, but on paper, at least, the most accomplished Indian footballer is Gurpreet Singh Sandhu, who's our number one goalkeeper, who has played in Europe, first division in Norway. And he was brought into the squad as a 16-year-old by Bob, so, and then he, that was the beginning of his exposure to the senior national team. So there will be, of course, always be some differences. But the general approach from, I think, the federation and overall, what you were talking about, what Jaideep was saying about him coming out and openly criticizing the comments made by the sports minister at that time, that kind of person is probably not acceptable these days. Also because a lot of funding for the expenses of the national football teams comes from the sports ministry. So Government of India funds. So that is a major issue. We have
that's the general consensus now. You can't speak out against the government, sport or no sport. So I mean,
absolutely. Times have changed a lot. And
at that time, Bob would have been called anti-national if this regime, if he would have said whatever he had to.
So if we do talk about Bob's eventual departure and the way that whole scenario was engineered when I think a new kind of leadership came into the AIFF and allegations of racism were made and all these kinds of things were brought in, which used to be, back in the day, the modus operandi to remove any foreign coach from a position in India, especially if the person is white. Ki racism allegation lagao and that will be the end of the story. And after that, I think Bob has maintained a distance from what do you call it, Indian football in most ways, other than whatever personal relationships he might have. Again, if you compare, the stature of or the kind of exposure that coaches have had, no doubt as a player, Igor Stimac with that legendary Croatia side has done great things as a player. But as a coach is a completely different story. Bob had won the Champions League back in the day, I think way back in 76 or something like that. So that level of coach coming to India and bringing that clarity of thought, of purpose, as well as a system that he is used to employing across teams around the world. We've had very little of these kind of opportunities either before or after. Again, no disrespect meant to any coach who has been in this position. It's doubtless a very difficult job to do. But this is just our opinion on Bob itself. So many, and he laid the foundation. One thing that we were talking also to a journalist from Qatar on our last show, who was talking about how comments have been made about the physicality of Indian players and how against in that draw against Qatar all those 20 months ago, that everyone was surprised that for 90 minutes these boys were pushing to the extent that the Qatari side looked more physically drained than the Indian side, and this was something that was kind of really brought in by Bob when the team was preparing to play the 2011 AFC Asian Cup, which was after a gap of almost 30 years. India was missing from that competition for around 30 years. So he kind of engineered all of these things. The Arrows project was at that time called the Pailan Arrows, which is sort of, I don't know, Atique, if you're familiar with this, but the junior team or like an under-19 team plays in the I-League as a kind of development squad. So that was something that was initiated in his tenure and on his, kind of pushing, including footing the bill, the AFF footing the bill for all of that. So these are things, and now you see how that Arrows project, you look at the graduates from that program, some of them are in the senior national team, many of them are playing in the Indian Super League. So it's having a wide impact on how the ecosystem is developing. So we have a lot to be thankful, I think, in terms of.
Atique, just one question. What sort of personality is Jamie Day then? Is he the types? So there's one, right? I'll fight for my player, and to hell with whatever you might say to me, I'll come out and say back to you. There's that personality. There's the other that I know how to handle things. So I'll keep both parties in my pocket. That being the federation, I'll keep the players in my pocket. I'll show the players. So what sort of a person is he? Does he go all out for his players and he fights with the federation, or what sort?
I would say somewhere in between. He's a very friendly person, media friendly with his players. But he doesn't have. I don't think he has that much authority over the federation. Like you said, Mr. Basu or Siddhant said, Mr. Bob Houghton had over the Indian Federation. I don't think he has that much say. But then again, he's very close to the players, and he would shield his players in any way.
Okay. Yeah, so it's nice to see that.
He's very friendly, very accessible, very likable guy.
Because you bring up relations with the media and things like that, I just want to make a small point that while Bob Houghton himself was, he was a straightforward guy. So if you asked him a question that he didn't like, he would respond in whatever manner he chose to respond. But the difference was that he treated his players as adults. So he didn't, as a centralized figure, he didn't, as a media person, for example, I was in Qatar for the Asian Cup in 2011, and most of my time was spent in the team hotel with the team. It didn't matter whether it was, when it was in terms of the match schedule or any of that. Sometimes he would look and give you one of those looks like, what are you doing here again? But beyond that, if the players were okay to interact and spend that time and be open to media scrutiny, then as a coach, he did nothing to kind of curtail that, which is different from what we are seeing, I think, not just in the case of the Indian national team today, but several teams. In fact, we contacted Jamal because we were in the I-League bubble in the same hotel for some time in Kolkata. So we had contacted Jamal to ask him to also come on the show and give us some insights into how Bangladesh are preparing for these matches. And he also said that, the federation has asked them to not speak to the media ahead of the matches and all of that. Although I have seen an interview or some comments on goal.com from him today, so I'm not sure, maybe he just wasn't in the mood. But overall, it seems like things are much more regulated now, whereas in those days there was a trust, going back to the trust factor in the players, that if these guys have been called up to the national team, if they do talk to the media, they are not going to say anything that will be detrimental to the common purpose that the national team has gone to achieve. Right? It'll at best be an honest personal perspective, which is something that's extremely lacking these days.
So what's the relationship then, Atique? in
I would
Bangladesh?
say, coming to that point, Jamal Siddhant was saying, I think it's because of how the federation handled this preparation thing. They're now not allowing the coach and the players to talk too much to the media because they know they made a mess of things of the preparation camp in Qatar and then Saudi Arabia. That's why they are trying to shift the focus to something else. Otherwise, the coach and the players are very close to the journalists and they're always open. And sorry, what were you saying?
No, I'm just saying. So, what sort of a relationship is it? Is it because there's one, when you regulate so many things, then you don't really know what the true story is. So you're trying through your channels to trying to get the true story of whatever's going on or not going on. What sort of a relationship is it for you guys? Not just with the player, but with regards to any news around Bangladeshi football. Is it easy access, or do you really have to do due diligence? Some you do get from, some you don't get from.
It's usually easy access, but then again, you have to use your own judgment in making the final decision. You know what I mean?
Fair point. I think because the point I was getting to, sir, was that ever since the Jaideep sir, that ever since the coming in of the ISL, there's that school of thought ki we cannot speak against it. If you're part of the ISL, then you cannot speak out against the ISL, the ills of the ISL. So while there are the positives that is brought on to Indian football, there are also other things that are negatives. One of which Siddhant touched upon, the way it was, put out there, that this suddenly one fine day, blink your eyes and the ISL is the top league of the country. I still remember one day, I think you won't believe this, Siddhant was at that time in between jobs. And so I used to be working for the host broadcaster. And one ISL season, I think it was season 5 or 4. And so he said, "Bhai, agar kuch kaam hai, let me know." So I spoke to the people who were doing broadcast for the ISL. I said, "Here's a guy who's been covering football for a long, long time, right? Way more experience than anyone who's doing broadcast. He can go and do your production job. He can go and do your interviews. He can do your stories because he has general understanding of the game and he knows television." And the reason he was, they said no to him is because they said, "Yeah, this guy is a guy who writes for the papers. He's a journalist. So what if he writes out asli stories outside? So then it'll be like he'll write out stories that we don't want out in the public." And so Siddhant was declined as part of a producer. So that is the reason I was actually asking, sir, because now Hamare mein Jaideep sir, it's like what he was touching upon was, it seems like such a long time back when you could get an honest sit down with a player. You could get I think the last time I heard anyone criticize the league was Sunil, which was a few years back when he said that this league winner should not be something. He had spoken about the league winner and the playoff.
Bangalore lost the final.
That's it. After that, nothing.
I think, this is my experience after covering football for almost 40 years. My experience is 10 years ago or 10 or 12 years ago, till the first half of the maybe up to 2010, maybe up to 2008, Indian football were run by people who, whether good or bad, they knew football. They knew one thing very well, that football has 3 sides: good, bad, and ugly. And all put together, it makes the game. If something becomes a legend or a tradition and become a big thing, it has come up not in one way. It has come up with all 3 things together. They have come up. If I let's talk about Durand Cup. It's a 125 years tournament. It was a very big tournament even 10 years back. But it had its good side, it had its bad side, it had its ugly sides also. And all put together, it became Durand Cup, the great tournaments. But currently, football is run by a bunch of people, I'm sorry to say, most of them
want to control the narrative.
Not only control the narrative, it is even All India Football Federation. First of all, they don't know football. And secondly, it is about headline management.
Yes.
The life is full of headline management. The life is not about the current scenario, the current job profile is not improvement of football or taking football ahead or even taking football behind. Let me take both these sides. It is about headline management. the briefing from the office, the briefing from the bosses is how to manage the headlines. So that is happening. So that's what is happening. See, if I ask a question to a coach that how the hell you conceded 6 goals in a match and put up such a bad display, I'm talking about a reality. And if he's trying to defend himself, he is also talking about the reality. Both put together makes a theory. But now the attitude is there will be, it should be nipped in the bud. No such question should be asked also. So I say it is not football management anymore. It is headline management.
Do you get press conferences with the coach, Atique?
All the time.
We don't. I'm just saying.
Unfortunately, we are not having any press conference before the travel to Qatar. But usually we get a lot of press conferences. We go to the field to ask questions and have conversations with him over telephone. And why not in India?
Oh, who would like to answer this?
I think I was lucky to attend the last press conference I have had with Stimac, and that was I think some 22 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little more also. In between, nothing has happened. I don't.
In between, its statements are released.
Statements and match previews.
Match previews
which is AFC rule. You can't help it.
Yeah, and if you do well in a game, then you get a tweet out or a nationalistic kind of tweet or a message out saying, "Well done, India. This is the way forward," and so on and so forth. If you lose 6-0 versus UAE, and that tells you the reality, complete silence. It was like that. So yeah, okay. So I'm sorry, we were getting into media and all. I'll get back to the game, guys. I think just focusing purely on the game, India, Bangladesh in Qatar, that will be played out. So both the teams would have played 90 minutes before facing each other, right? What are you expecting from the Bangladesh side? Are you expecting a similar sort of setup, what we did in Kolkata versus India? Or are you expecting something different given it's a neutral venue and more than about 10 months have passed or so since that game happened?
More than actually it's 16 months.
16 months. Sorry. I'm really bad with the
November 2019, I think. It was something like that.
Yes, about personnel, I told you that there are quite a few players missing from that squad, but the style will be the same. Kolkata was an away match for us, and Qatar will be an away match for us too. It's unfortunate. Let me remind you that we have already played 4 away matches and 1 home match, just 1 home match. So the next 3 matches were supposed to be our home matches. So we were supposed to host India, Afghanistan, and Oman. And teams like Bangladesh, they rely so much on these home advantages. Like if you see the match against Qatar, we played in Dhaka in 2019. It was the pitches here are really heavy. So teams coming from Qatar or India or Oman, they tend to struggle on these heavy pitches. So that is something we look forward to. On the contrary, when we go to play on excellent pitches in Qatar or elsewhere, our players struggle because they are more used to playing on heavy surfaces and slow football. So they struggle a bit, but there will be no shortage of effort. And there will be defensive in the beginning, but they will need goals. Actually, they will need goals because they're at the bottom of the group. They will need goals, but I'm not sure where those goals are coming from.
Siddhant bhai, what are you expecting in that game? Because I think we've been talking about this. So we're considering Qatar, like we're not expecting a result versus Qatar. We're speaking realistically, but we're saying that how you play in the 90 versus Qatar will play a huge part on how you play versus Bangladesh and Afghanistan. Siddhant bhai, what are you expecting? Because when Sunil came on the show, he was I mean, sir touched upon it earlier as well, saying that it was one of the worst performances. He also said that we lacked ideas. We completely lacked ideas. So Siddhant, in that sense, you expect the coach, because so here's the conundrum, Atik, from an Indian perspective. On one day versus Qatar, you play a certain setup, all behind the ball, put, put, put. As soon as you get a few chances, you break and you move. Then in the space of say 5 days, you play a Bangladesh where the onus is on you to say, I want to control the ball. I want to control how this game flows. And so how do you shake that shift? And you suppose that is the biggest challenge for India, and how they make
Exactly.
that shift.
Sorry,
Sorry,
Siddhant, let me
Atik, please,
interrupt
please.
you. Yeah, I thought that was what the issue was during that Kolkata match. They lacked ideas and they couldn't shift from that sort of mode to an attacking sort of mode. They lacked ideas in the attacking third. Great. Siddhant.
True.
Yeah, so we've touched on this from the India perspective, I think several times in the past few weeks. So a lot of our midfield, our central midfield particularly, have had decent seasons in the ISL, and some particularly those who play for FC Goa, their club football. Also decent time in the Asian Champions League against some difficult opposition from West Asia. So I am expecting a lot more to come out of central midfield. I'm also expecting that that the team is taking it quite personally, the sort of criticism that is coming in after these results, and is going to be very keen to sort of re-establish some kind of dominant position, at least vis-a-vis other South Asian teams, and Bangladesh being, I suppose, the closest in terms of football competition to India. I think it's most important there. Despite the traditional India-Pakistan rivalry, I think as far as football is concerned, Bangladesh is the number one rival in that sense. So I think for that game the approach will be attacking. I think I'm expecting, I don't know, like Manveer Singh, Sunil Chhetri, a bunch of like attacking minded players to form the core of that squad, and maybe the odd change at the back as well to bring in more energy and more forward momentum. Broadly speaking, I think that's about it, because it's not, again, we have striker issues as well. So other than Sunil and Manveer, not too many people are getting goals. But our, their full season has gone past since the last time we faced Bangladesh, and several of the younger members of the squad have had a chance to get game time, score goals, get the wing play. They've gotten a lot of opportunities to work on that, develop those aspects of their game. So I think we'll see a different performance from India than we did in the last game, definitely, obviously, but different in the sense that it will be with more intent rather than going into the game with kind of maybe slightly complacent, slightly overconfident attitude.
I think what's the general formation that the Bangladeshi side plays at international football?
4-2-3-1. Usually 4-2-3-1, but when playing against Qatar or Oman, you would even turn to 5-4-1.
5-4-1. So
when
he's
playing
pretty.
against Qatar.
Yeah.
But he's 4-2-3-1.
4-2-3-1. Yeah, I think sir, the 4-2-3-1 is somewhat what Steamach has also been playing in a sense. At least we saw that in these two games in the UAE also.
I think in the UAE, in the Qatar match, he will definitely play with a tighter defense.
Yeah.
On a second thought, I thought he might bring in Sana also with Sandesh as two stopper backs. But I would like to ask one thing to Atique. Tell me, Atique, one thing. See, we are, as far as India is concerned, we are going there to see whether we can finish third or fourth. Third is, I don't think we are going to, I don't know, maybe, I'm not very sure about, but we are going there to have 6 points at least and so that it helps us in our Asia Cup qualifiers to an extent in getting the draws and the right teams we get, the lower category teams we get in our Asia Cup draw. And what actually is the position of Bangladesh, and what is their aim of when they're going to Qatar?
Well,
How many points?
Bangladesh have only 1 point. That was the 1-1 draw against India.
Yeah.
They had 1 or 2 very close matches, one against Afghanistan, 1-0, and one against Qatar, 2-0 at home. But as I said before, we were supposed to have 3 home matches, and we were relying on points from in matches against India and Afghanistan greatly. But now they're playing in Qatar. I don't think it will be that easy to get points against them. Maybe 2 draws. If we get 4 points from those 2 matches, that will be beyond our hope. The coach would ideally like to have at least 4 points, but that will be very, very difficult playing in those pitches, in those conditions, away from home.
But Atique, how do you view the Asian Cup? Suddenly from a 16-team tournament goes to 24. So we here in India at least feel that now, by hook or by crook, we are playing every edition of the Asian Cup. What's the sentiment back in Bangladesh with regards?
It's obviously made it easier for teams like Bangladesh to at least have a chance to go there. But then again, you'll have to perform first. You'll have to score goals and you'll have to win matches. As I said, we could have had a few more points in the past 2 matches. Now we're at the bottom of the table, but India on 4 points, India 3 points, Afghanistan on 4 points. So there is not big difference. If 1 or 2 results go our way, things can change drastically.
Yeah.
So we'd like to be very optimistic.
I just feel from a Bangladeshi perspective, the biggest positive is you have a coach who is, how do I put it? He's not a people pleaser. So if you want to play 5-4-1, play 5-4-1. I don't care if it's getting me my result, it's getting me my result. If I have to play 4-2-3-1 and I have to keep my 2 at the back, 6 at the back, and just give 1 or 2 chances to spray in front, go do it. And I think that could work in Bangladesh's favor because they know that India, when they come to play against them, they are coming to look for the goals.
Yeah.
They're coming to find a goal. So you might play a 4-3-3. You might ask people to bump forward. And when they bomb forward is when Bangladesh has a chance. And how much they go for it will be an interesting one, Jaideep sir. That, how much Bangladesh goes for it when they find openings. How much they foray into the Indian goal. Because in Kolkata, they shocked them completely by taking the lead. And then after that, like Atique mentioned at the start of the show, India was on the back foot. Despite having large numbers of the ball, they really didn't create anything. So they were on the back foot for most parts of the game. They were playing into Bangladesh's hands.
Actually, Bangladesh should have gone ahead in the very first minute.
Penalty.
Rahul Beke or India were very, very lucky not to concede that penalty.
Yeah.
At least I thought after watching the replay that India were very, very lucky. Had it been 1-0, then match would have finished. Well, the match would have changed a lot. But I don't know about how Bangladesh is looking at it. But I sincerely hope India will learn from their mistakes. Put up a defense and put up a style of play. A lot of water has flown through the river since then. A lot of bad results have come in India's way, and little good result has come in India. Except 1-1 draw against Oman, I don't think India has not much to really talk about in the last 1 year. So now they have got 15 days in Qatar. They will train together. They have got most of the players they wanted. Coach has got most of the players he wanted. They have also some of them have recovered from injuries. So I think India will learn from its mistakes and see, for India it's a 3-point match.
But I think that is Bangladesh's biggest advantage going into this game. That India is assuming
could be, but
we
India
need the
cannot,
3 points.
But India can't help it. India can't help it.
Yeah.
India has to go for 3 points. If they don't come back with 3 points, it's a failure.
Yeah. And I think that plays into the opposition's hand.
Opposition. It's a failure. They have to come back with 3 points if they want a positive result.
I think you mentioned Sunil. Any other Indian players that you guys know about back home in Bangladesh?
We know the names like Adil Khan, Ashik Kurunian, Pritam Kotal, because he comes from a very close Assam family. Gurpreet Singh Sandhu, he played brilliantly against Qatar, but these are not really household names because people, I mean, as I said before, people do not really watch ISL or I League here. The way they watch IPL, excuse me, they do not watch ISL. So no, these Indian names are not household names, but everyone knows about Sunil Chetri. And unfortunately, Bangladesh and India haven't played too many matches in the last 1 decade.
Yeah.
Only 3 seniors at the senior level. And you would be surprised, I told before, all 3 times were draws, and all 3 matches, Bangladesh were leading up to, let's say, 90 minutes or 88 minutes or 95 minutes. And 3 of those goals came from Sunil Chetri in the dying minutes. So
one in
it's
the
not
south,
so there are 2 sides of the story. Bangladesh in the last 1 decade have gone out of the group stages of the SAF championship all 4 times. And on the other hand, they have not lost against India. They have always dominated India in a way.
That's a fair point. Just for all our viewers, because this show, we put it out as saying focus on Bangladesh, the opposition. Could you tell us about a few Bangladeshi players? Because you're saying the team has changed. We know Jamal, who's playing for Mohammedan, but any other players we should be keeping an eye on and what their qualities are?
There is not, I don't think there is a really special player in Bangladesh. It's mostly teamwork, actually. But you can keep an eye on our goalkeeper, young goalkeeper, Anisur Rahman Siko. He's a very good goalkeeper. Played only 2 or 3 matches for the national team, but he's very good. Regarded very highly. And there are the wing players. Mutin Mia is one. He has some good dribbling skills, good speed. Another one is Mahmoud Rahman. These are good players. We have good players on wings. And we have in the midfield, there is Jamal and Johnny and Manik. These are good players. But the thing is now there's, due to those injuries, the defense is pretty inexperienced. I don't know how they can cope up. These young players can cope up with the Indian team.
Okay, guys, I think we've done more than an hour, and I think thank you so much for your time, man. We've been keeping you, and you've been really patiently been answering all our questions. Annie, you want anything else you'd like to know before we sort of call it a day on the show? Anything else you guys want to talk about, or should I just end it then?
No, I think you've covered pretty much all the main topics, and I think Atique has done a great job kind of fielding all the questions that we had for him. So thank you very much for that, Atique, and I hope we can maybe catch up, do this again after the game, irrespective of what the result.
Would love that. If you could take out time.
Thank you so much for bringing me here, and I'd really love to join again sometime.
Perfect, Atique. Atique Anam, guys, that's journalist for Daily Star who covers football in a big way. Thank you so much for taking our time and joining us on 420 grams. And if you can, please spread our show in Bangladesh. Absolutely. And because at the end of the day, even if we do speak in a little bit of Hindi, but the language of football, I think that pierces through everything. So that's pretty easy.
You can rest assured, Hindi people understand Hindi. A lot of people understand Hindi in Bangladesh.
Okay.
Perfect. Done. So then we are growing our audience.
And if you want to do a quick look at the comments and take any questions specifically that might be there, we can do that before we wrap up.
Okay, so if there is a Bangladesh question, Atique, would you have some time to stay with us?
Sure.
Sure. Okay, so let me just see if there are any questions.
Let me know, as you look through the questions, I would like to ask Mr. Basu about Indian football. Like, what has been the galvanizing factor of the Indian football in the past decade? Was it more due to the Indian Arrows or AIFF contribution, or was it due to the ISL thing? They jumped from 157 to 100.
See, that was see, one thing was if you look at the what you call it, the change of ranking from 173 to 97 at one point of time. They were 97 for a few days also. That is because of clever management, very well planned. The which team is to play and where to play and against what kind of side to play. That was planned very well. It was the credit was given to Stephen Constantine. Of course, Stephen also had some credit, but I would say the AFF office had also a great contribution to make. Those who were on the behind the scene, those who were planning the entire thing. So, and if you talk about the positivity of Indian football, then Arrows is the biggest positive of Indian football. There are too many negatives of Indian football at the moment, which I don't want to raise again. Then Arjun will stop me again. So, because I have spoken about it so many times.
मैं mute कर दूंगा, sir, like a news channel. मैं mute कर दूंगा.
So of course you are spot on. It is the Arrows which at the moment stand the lone positivity of Indian football, and I stress on it, the lone positivity of India.
Fair point. There's a question for you, Atique, that's come from our guys on the chat. And it's a nice question from Siddharth Lotongbam. I hope I've got your name correct. And if I haven't, then apologies for that. He's saying Bangladesh women's under-16 played the Asian Cup under-16 twice. How is Bangladesh doing so well in the women's game?
That's actually they started early in the middle of 2005 actually. So at that time, not too many countries were into women's football. In South Asia, you can say India and Nepal were way ahead of everyone else in terms of women's football. But you see on Pakistan, Iran, and other countries, there are a lot of countries that didn't really realize the importance of women's football at that time. So we started slowly in the middle of last decade and focused on school. There are two school tournaments, one for boys and one for girls, primary school tournaments. It's a nationwide tournament. And that played a big role in getting these girls playing at the top level. And most of those girls coming from the remote areas, remote schools of the country, and they're being trained by the federation all the year round, and that's why they are doing so well. But then again, this improvement in age group level is still not being shifted to the senior level in women's football. There is a lot of work to be done there.
Just one final question, and I think we can wrap the show after that, because I think we have similarities in this question that whenever the national team does not do well, one section of the stakeholders start going PIO, player of Indian origin. When are they going to come and play for India? There are so many players of Indian origin in Europe. And I'm sure likewise for Bangladesh, is the same sort of noise there for Bangladeshi players who are playing in Europe?
There is actually, because Jamal Boya is one of those. He came to Bangladesh in 2012. First time, he couldn't cope up with the weather, the environment, the culture here. Then again, he came again 2 years later, and then got into the side, and now he's the leader of the team. So people get encouraged by these stories. There is Tariq Kazi, as Mr. Basu said. There are other players who of Bangladeshi origin playing in Europe, USA, and other parts of the world, but it's not easy to attract them to come to Bangladesh to play in our league.
And the boy in Leicester,
Hamza Chaudhry, well, he has a pretty good future over there. He's playing for Leicester City. He has represented England at the age group level, but he has said that he would decide someday whether he could come to Bangladesh. He speaks Bengali at home, so he could come at some point, but not now. There is another thought of giving African origin players, African players who played in our league for a long time. There is an idea we might give them our nationality, but that is being discussed for some time. There are both sides of the coin there, so that is not something that has been worked up.
Interesting thought.
Yeah,
a lot of teams in the Middle East have done that.
So just to sort of jump in, because this PIO thing has become a big thing on the chat. And we, we have it's been something that we've talked about many times on the show. That like it firstly differs from country to country. So what Bangladesh's rules for dual nationality or dual citizenship are, India might have different rules. Currently, the way things are, and with a new sort of order passed by the Ministry of External Affairs recently, even limiting overseas citizens of India further, we do not allow any citizen of India to hold another passport. So you have to actually give up your citizenship of the country wherever you're born, whether that's Denmark or the US or the UK. So if you look at, I guess, the largest proportion of Indians involved in football are probably in the UK. But they would have to give up citizenship of that country or the passport of that country to come to India and play to represent the national team. Now here there are two different things. One is those wanting to come and play club football in India. The other is representing India in international competitions. There are two very different sort of possibilities and issues. So until that system changes, and this applies to not just footballers, but any profession that you might follow or whatever. You want to move to India and take Indian citizenship, you have to give up any other citizenship you might have. Other countries are able to do this, including Pakistan, where I think, sorry, I've forgotten the name of that player who also played in the Premier League.
Zeshaman.
Jaish Rahman. Yeah. Jaish Rahman, because he was able to retain his British passport and have dual nationality, dual citizenship. That is why once he was out of reckoning for England in terms of the England national team, he chose to represent Bangladesh. Same with Hamza Chaudhary. Might happen 3, 4, 5 years later if he doesn't get an England call up, if he doesn't play for England, then he is free to declare himself for Bangladesh and play for Bangladesh if the rules of that country allow it. In India, the government of India does not allow this. So this PIO conversation is really pointless to have on a football platform, because there's nothing really that we can do about it. And this applies to all sports across. I mean, I think, Jaideep sir, the tennis player,
Prakash Amritraj.
No longer playing. Yeah.
He had to leave after playing for India. He had to leave because he refused to leave his US passport.
Yeah.
Which was fine. But he was not eligible for India selection. That was.
Yeah,
and you were talking about Rajiv Ram, but Rajiv Ram had always preferred to play for the United States only.
So what is Jamal's case then, Atique? Has he given up his passport or
no. You're allowed to have dual citizenship here.
Okay. Which India is not allowed.
India is not allowed. Yeah. Oh, so then so then at least you guys can have that conversation of at least putting it out there on the table for someone who's playing in Europe and saying, look, this is what we're offering you. You're not letting go of your passport. And then the call is, of course, yours to take if you want to come back. Then I think it's an interesting conversation in Bangladesh.
There are several players that we have spoken to and that have spoken to us as well. Even current players like Danny Bath, for example, central defender, a position in which we can really use help, but again, now this man has lived his entire life in the United Kingdom. He probably has family there, etc., etc. In order to play for India, he'll have to give up all of that, all of the rights that he has as a citizen of the United Kingdom, and then take up Indian citizenship, which is a very, I think, difficult ask of someone.
But for that matter, India will never allow dual citizenship in near future, because it will create so much other kinds of problems for India, which sports has got nothing. Sports is a very minor thing in that framework. So India, I don't think in near future they are not going to allow dual citizenship. The government of India will never allow it.
Perfect. Okay, I think it's time then to end the show. Atique, once again, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Thank you so much for taking our time and answering all our questions. I hope whatever you were asking us, you got some decent answers and you've taken in some insights on Indian football. Jaideep sir, Siddhant, as always, good to have you guys. Also, before leaving, हमने तो नहीं कंफर्म किया था कि फिलीपीन के खिलाफ मैच हो रहा है. हमने तो कहा था भाई कंफर्म नहीं है. खबरों पे इतना ध्यान ना दो. जब तक ऑफिशियल स्टेटमेंट ना बाहर आए, भाई तब तक it is not confirmed. So yeah, so I guess India is not playing Philippines. That has also come out as a report. मजेदार बात तो ये है, मैं उसको भी रिपोर्ट की तरह चला रहा हूँ यहाँ पे.
नहीं, मजेदार बात ये है कि स्टेटमेंट यही है कि इंडिया इज नॉट प्लेइंग फिलीपींस.
But 2 days back India was playing. It was confirmed India is playing.
No, but they said not playing as if 2 days back they said it they were playing. They never said anything. But what is the point of saying not playing? Better keep quiet.
ये बात तो सही. It's better to keep quiet. But ठीक है. Atique, Siddhant and Jaideep sir, thank you so much for joining us. This was another episode of 420 Grams. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.
Atique bhai, thank you.